Okay, I think it'd be good to give a overview on this complex situation with the deportation of, for what we do on this channel, specifically these so-called gang members to El Salvador. Now, first of all, some basic facts about U.S. demography. Right now, about 13% of the population is foreign born, which is very high. That's about as high as it was in the 1920s, and then there were laws passed restricting immigration from a lot of places, including Europe. And like in the 50s and stuff, the Make America Great Again era, I think it was down, it might have been as low as 4% or something. So America does have a lot of immigrants, but immigrants drive population growth, especially in the country, all the industrialized countries, Japan, Western Europe, United States, are below replacement value. The natives are having less children than would be required to maintain a stable population. So this idea that we shouldn't be letting in immigrants in at all is incorrect just from an economic standpoint. So there's that. Now, a U.S. congressman just went down to El Salvador to visit that guy, Abrego. He came back from a 3-day trip to El Salvador. They grabbed him. They said he was an MS-13 member. There is a record of the State Department saying that that actually was a mistake. He said he was actually fleeing the gangs pressing him in El Salvador. I will tell you, once I was having lunch downtown L.A., I was just a place across the street from my apartment sitting, and a young lady was sitting next to me. She had her corporate ID on. She might have worked for Coca-Cola or something. She was from El Salvador. And she said she can't. This is how bad it was down there. I mean, so the crackdown was needed. Now, well, let me get into that. So this woman, she couldn't interact with her family on social media because the gangs would watch the people down there social media and say, oh, you got a relative in the United States with a good job. They need to send us money every month or we're going to hurt you. So that was real. What precipitated the crackdown, 60-some homicides in one day. But that probably, when they did that orgy of violence, I think that was part of a battle with the government. They did it on purpose because the government didn't come through with some stuff they promised. Because Bukele, so I just watched it. I had seen reference and stuff like this before, and I just watched on Renegade Media, J59J. He's, I guess, a Norteño dropout, but he has a good channel, and he talks about these issues. But he had an MS-13 member call in from prison, or he just got released from prison, and listening to him talk refreshed my memory about, so of course when the gangs were very, very powerful, they were part of the political power brokers down there in El Salvador. They had Bukele, that current president, who had been a DJ, and no, his name was not Hispanic, he's Lebanese, if I'm not mistaken. There's more Lebanese, which you could think of it. It's the same place that that is now Palestine, sort of. There's more Lebanese around the world than there are Jews, and they have the same trading, merchant culture, and they're actually, the Jews didn't move around the world till after Rome destroyed Israel in 50 AD, 50 BC, 50 AD. The Lebanese, the Phoenicians were around. So they're before that, 1,000 years, 800 years before that. So they're an older culture, and there's more of them. And Bukele is one. Just, it's not anything nefarious, just interesting demographic note. So Bukele, just like the presidents before him, had to seek out relationships with the gangs, MS-13 and 18th Street. MS-13 is much bigger down there, but 18th Street, Calle Ocho as it's called down there, and MS just calls itself MS. They dropped the 13 down there. So the war had been so heavy that there were whole prison. One prison would be just Calle Ocho, one would be just MS. And you might for those of you that don't understand and think that those gangs, and some U.S. politicians will make it sound like this, those gangs came to the United States. Well, it's quite the opposite. Of course, 18th Street is not 18th Street in El Salvador. It's 18th Street in Los Angeles. 18th Street grew out of, there's an old gang, Clanton 14, just west of downtown. They didn't want to let certain people break away. That became the 18th Street gang. 18th Street is the largest. They say there's more 18th Street than Crips. Like, 18th Street is huge. They have a bunch of cliques all over the place. Are there more 18th Street than Crips? I'm not sure. There's probably more 18th Street than Bloods, though. There's a lot of 18th Street, a lot of cliques. They're the biggest membership of the groups that make up the Mexican Mafia. They were known, again, the oldest gangs, the East LA gangs, were Mexican. And to this day, East LA, I think, is pretty much still 95% Mexican specifically. So in other parts of LA, South Central, the West Side, there's a lot more Central American, El Salvadorans, Guatemalans, Hondurans, that make up the population. And of course, the gangs. 18th Street was known for having some black members, white members. It's just this really big gang. MS started out as a stoner gang in the late 70s, maybe early 80s. They weren't being allowed into these gangs. They were being preyed upon by the older gangs. They eventually formed more of a regular street gang, became noted for their brutality. But that's because a lot of the young men, they were coming from El Salvador, which was a war-torn country. Now, this is, and I'm not on here, you don't hear me generally saying, I don't start my videos saying we're standing on stolen land. Like, I've traveled the world. America does have a dark, bloody history. So does pretty much everywhere. So I don't think of America as a evil country anymore, in the sense of that human beings generally are capable of doing a lot of evil stuff. So America has a lot of bad stuff in its history. So does everywhere else. But in the case of El Salvador, we did destabilize the country. It is our fault. Their economy and their society was broken for a long time. A lot of violence. And to get back to Calle Ocho and MS, we, in the 90s mainly, mass deportation started, and they've been going on and continue, where they just, same thing they do with Mexican gang, dump them in Tijuana. They just sent people back. So Trump is not the one who started this, and the amount of people he's sending back pales in comparison. It was the first Bush and Clinton sent back tremendous amounts of people that had probably come to the U.S. when they were very young, and that's what exported. So we exported crime. You know, it's not always about people from third world countries coming here and causing crime. We export guns. We exported L.A. street gangs that were already large, highly structured, very violent, and had training in urban warfare from being at urban war in L.A. in the 80s, 90s, when it was a very violent place. L.A.'s crime has gone way down. There's pockets of it, just like New York, but I think Detroit has about as many murders as L.A., and L.A. has 8 times as many people now. But there's still treacherous people in L.A. There's some rough people. They're more scattered. You got a lot of rough L.A. people that ain't in L.A. They're living in other places, or they bop in and out of the neighborhoods, but it's another story. So this guy that the senator went go down to see, it seems like he was not a gang member. There's some other horrific stories, like a gay hairdresser that got caught up in the sweep. Trump is indiscreet, and Trump, of course, never wants to admit he made a mistake. Hopefully, if this guy was a law-abiding citizen, he'll be back over. And so, I lost my train of thought on a 59J interviewing this MS-13. He said, so Bukele, the president in El Salvador, just like prior presidents had to work with the MS and 18th Street for votes, for blah, blah, blah. They had sat down and crime had been going down prior to that big outburst that led to the crackdown. And they were doing that on their own. And according to what this guy said, he sounded pretty plugged in. Several $1 million for Bukele's campaign, kind of like a bribe, were given from MS. But there was a tighter relationship between Calle Ocho and Bukele, so they gave the money to Calle 18 as part of the peace process to give to Bukele, but that money ended up getting diverted to the Mexican mafia in L.A., who kept it for themselves, and then so now MS, who make up the bulk of the prisoners. Now, there's a lot more MS than Calle 18 down there, but I think they're overrepresented in the crackdown. And also, if you're interested, or say, depending how this will do, I can do more of a deep dive. I just want to give you a quick overview, but a lot of evidence that the leaders, like the highest up of MS and probably Calle 18, were allowed to flee the country before the crackdown. So there's a 1% of El Salvador's population is in prison. They're all men, so that's 2% of men, and of course they're probably all in between, 18 and 50. Probably 3 or 4% of all the men between 18 and 50 are in prison. Crime is down, but at what expense? That's probably not going to be able to last forever. And it sounds like there was some shady backroom dealings. If Bukele let the leaders get away and they sacrificed the rank and file, well, that's kind of how war works. But it gives you an insight. Pretty bad. I mean, again, Mexican mafia, predatory. Leaders of MS and Calle 18 left their young guys out to dry, or just the rank and file. And Bukele very cynically is putting people into what seems like a really horrific, they have no out date, and etc. So that's just a quick overview. But there was some behind the scenes with money before the election with MS, Calle Ocho, Bukele, the DJ. Bukele, you should go watch my MS-13 and Bitcoin. Just type in Al Prophet MS-13 Bitcoin. Bukele, at the same time, he cut a deal to make Bitcoin the official currency of El Salvador based on these volcano bonds, because there's some volcanoes there, they can generate energy. It's kind of weird. He is part of this gang crackdown. Journalists, if they write about MS-13 or Calle Ocho, or MS, it's seen as promoting it. So by even writing an article about it, you could subject yourself to charges. They call Bukele the world's coolest dictator. I mean, that's ha, but putting that type of a chill on journalists that they can't even discuss, they can't use those words, Calle Ocho, Marisol Vachucha, MS, in an article, while that also stops them from talking about just probably a lot of politics in general down there. Like, for example, if Bukele was working behind the scenes with these gangs, well, you can't talk about it because you'd have to use their names. So, and the idea that the United States, there's been several of the MAGA people saying, oh, well, there's a lot we can learn from El Salvador. The idea that the country with 26% of the world's economy, us, 330 million people, there really isn't anything to learn from a little. Not that people in El Salvador are bad or dumb, but it's such an infinitesimal country compared to us. That would be like the governor of California coming over my house and say, oh, Al, I like how you have people doing chores in your house. The state could learn a lot from that. The gulf in size is just too much. They like the idea they can send people out of the country and they don't have the rights that they would get here, which is spooky. Who else are they gonna? I think Trump and them would like to be able to send any dissenters about anything away. But so that's a good basic overview of what's going on. You can delve into it more on your own. You can use these search terms. You can watch my MS-13 and Bitcoin How Profit. Search that. Look up Bukele working with gangs. Look up MS-13 leaders escape El Salvador. Look up MS-13 versus Mexican Mafia in federal prison. You can research this on your own. If this seems to be of interest, I'll do something more elaborate. How Profit American Dope. Getting ready to go to Coachella. Last weekend was 100 degrees. I'm glad I didn't get my ticket last week. This weekend, it's beautiful weather, 80 degrees. Got my Bruce Lee on. See you soon. How Profit American Dope.